Hello, everyone who is joining us. We're grateful for your time today. Thank you for being here. We've got some terrific presentations, a lot of good content and updates for you. Daniel, are we at a good level of participation or are we ready to get started?
Let's go. We are ready.
Super. So thank you again to all of you. We know how busy you are. We appreciate you being here today. My name is Lisa Tepper-Bates, and I am President and CEO of the United Way of Connecticut, and very proud to be a partner with all of you in not only the Child Tax Credit Initiative, but also with many of you in the End Child Poverty effort. So thank you to all of you for being here today with us. We're going to talk about the legislative session that just concluded, and then we're going to look forward to our next steps together. So before we get started, I just want to give a big thank you to all of our friends and colleagues who are here today to share their perspectives on our victories, our challenges, and the way ahead. That includes Kate Robinson from Gallo and Robinson, Tita Athonsang from United Way of Coastal and Western Connecticut, Amari Brantley from End Hunger, Connecticut, Vanessa Hawk, representing the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance, and Janae Woods-Weber from She Leads Justice. We'll also be joined in a little bit by Representative Kate Farrar, who represents West Hartford and Newington in the 20th House District. So that's our agenda for you, and we are going to go ahead and get started. Over to you, Daniel Fitzmaurice, to lead us through.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and thanks to everybody for being here. Yes, we're going to go through a very straightforward agenda today where all of those amazing folks who were literally in the room up in Hartford and all throughout the state advancing really important policies to make sure that ALICE families have everything they need and can get ahead in this challenging affordability moment. As well as making sure that we kind of leave with some ideas about what we could do between right now at the end of a legislative session and what's coming up next for the 2027 session in January with Representative Farrar and some of our other panelists as well. But to get us started, I really wanted to literally go back to the beginning of our year in the fall of 2020. Fall of 2026 this year, when we had our legislative announcement about the new ALICE report, as well as our policy agenda. And perhaps you've seen this video before, but I think it's a really helpful grounding in the challenges that families are facing, as well as what solutions are right there in front of us.
Financial hardship is surging with a record high 581,000 households who are unable to make ends meet.
I represent many suburban households with 2 working parents and 2 school-age children that are barely getting by. As we go into the school year with more economic hardship forecasted for families, I see myself having to work more but being able to do less. Suffering in silence won't bring us any relief, but legislative, bold, and decisive action will.
I suddenly became a single parent and a sole provider to my 3-year-old child. I was college educated, working full-time at above minimum wage, and doing everything I could to provide for my family, and yet it wasn't enough. Every month I'd struggle to pay rent, afford childcare, and cover basic necessities. I was doing everything right, but I couldn't make ends meet.
In the last 2 months alone, the data shows that parents have had to spend an average of $400 more to purchase essential baby goods. And with the tariffs, an estimated $2,400 increase is expected per household just this year.
In about 10 years, we have added to the rolls of ALICE families in our state 80,000 households. 80,000 households is bigger than Hartford, bigger than New Haven, more households than Waterbury, more households than Stamford.
ALICE is asset limited, income constrained, employed. And let's focus on the fact that these are hardworking people that are trying to make ends meet, and it's just not possible in this current situation.
This is a financial storm and a growing crisis. No corner of our state is untouched. These are our neighbors. These are our child care workers, health aides, teachers, cashiers, and people who help our community thrive.
Financial hardship is not about making bad choices. It's not about not knowing how to pay bills. It's an economy where wages don't keep up with rising costs of housing, food, and childcare. Then I remembered something, the 2-on-1 advertisements from my Middlesex United Way workplace campaigns. In desperation, I made that call. And that is a decision that changed everything. They gave me the stability I needed to keep my job, care for my child, and ultimately build a future here in Connecticut.
I started to lose myself because I didn't know where to go, I didn't know what to do. One day, my friend called me on a three-way and called 211 and put her phone down. From that day, my life changed.
Connecticut is now an outlier. It continues to be the only high-cost state in the country with a broad-based income tax that does not recognize the cost of raising a child with a child tax credit. They're worried, they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, and they expect us to deliver for them. Today's Alice report and the federal actions, they only make clear the urgency of this moment.
Thanks for recentering, I think, a little bit on that in the voices of some of those families. And a lot of them were very involved in the legislative session as well. I'm going to bring on our great collaborator and friend, Kate Robinson from Gallo and Robinson, so we can continue to lay the groundwork for our conversation about our policy agenda by talking a little bit with you, Kate, about what is happening with that gap between what we just heard and what is resonating within the halls of the legislative chambers and within the halls of the Capitol. And I'll just continue with where we were first by sharing something that just happened to me the other day, Kate, which is that I was talking to somebody and she was saying that I know that my car tax is coming due in a couple of weeks, and I'm starting now to budget accordingly so that I can get ready to pay that couple $100 bill when it hits in July, which I think really speaks to that like pressure and stress and strain that these families are feeling, yet at the same time, like figuring out like I got to pay this bill now and put that bill off later. And I close my eyes when I fill the gas right now because it's just impossible to understand how much more money is going into my tank so I can get to work and get my kids to summer camp when that comes due. So like for me, that was this week a really live example of what it feels like out in the world there across hardworking households. But how would you begin to describe how that resonates inside the legislative and executive branch offices?
Sure. So thank you very much for your warm introduction. I have to say it's really hard work these days, and I think it's hard to be aware of all the hardship that people are facing and to keep nourished and encouraged. But I think this camaraderie and this coalition helps us to continue to be refreshed and be as fresh as we can, bringing as much energy to what is going to be a long path in front of us. I want to first start by reminding everybody that we have been successful on the child tax credit advocacy front because we do, and we were successful not last session, but the session before, in making sure that there was a $250 additional dependent tax credit for the families that qualify for earned income tax credit. And the way we talked about that last year was that it was a narrow victory. But a victory is a victory, whether it's a 1 point or a 7 point or a 21 point victory. A victory is a victory, a win is a win. And that was sustained.
To be sure, Kate, it's a $34.5 million victory.
That's right.
When you tally it all together every
That's
year
right.
moving
That's
forward.
Right. So, that didn't happen by itself, and that didn't happen just because it was a good idea. That happened because there was a sustained effort and then a lot of individuals physically standing in the space on a Saturday to make sure that it was up for consideration as they were making final decisions. So I want to kind of start by reminding everybody that we are standing on a narrow victory, but I also want to give the context of what this session was like. And most of you are very aware of the context we in Connecticut find ourselves in relative to what's happening in the rest of the country, not including the allergies that have beset us all. And
All
so,
good.
you know, many of us are also advocates in the basic needs space, where we're trying to make sure that our neighbors and friends and, you know, classmates, schoolmates, etc., have everything that they need to lead a successful life in the state. And we were dealing with a federal government shutdown in the fall, which then had very negative consequences and very quick impact, particularly on people who were SNAP recipients. Their ability to access food and nutrition assistance disappeared in a minute. And it really ground everything to a halt. And all of a sudden, I think we had a very stark and visual reminder of how close so many of our neighbors are to the edge, right? And that federal shutdown ultimately brought about the beginning of what is essentially a federal cuts emergency fund, which passed in special session on November 11 and 12 of last year. $500 million from surplus funds were set aside for the purposes of plugging gaps that are created by the federal government and cuts that descended from the adoption of the federal budget, which we refer to as HR 1. And so that establishment of a fund has plugged some of the gaps, but that necessity of a federal fund kind of undergirds the attitude and the kind of situation that we were encountering as advocates going into the short session, right? The short session is the second year of the budget, and we have a 2-year budget situation. And the second year is when we make adjustments. So the cuts that happened in HR 1 were supposed to be considered, but some of them were offset by this federal emergency fund. Not all, but some. A lot of the eligibility criteria issues, particularly related to SNAP and Medicaid, which is our medical program for people who are uninsured and low income, a lot of those impacts are slower moving, but a sure thing. And so the emergency fund doesn't necessarily address that slow moving criteria, eligibility criteria. And so we had kind of two things happening at the same time, a pile of money in one place and a lack of money in another, right? And then comes the Child Tax Credit Coalition that comes in with a brilliant idea for the 5th year in a row saying, let's spend $500 million this way.
Oh, 300 million.
Or 300 million. I'm sorry, 300
I
million.
wish it would be 500 million.
Emergency
We'll
fund
keep
is
it at
500 million.
300.
So to refresh everybody's memory, we have been consistent on the concept of $600 per child up to 3 children for a single household of $100,000 or a 2-income household of $200,000. And the cost to implement that policy would be $300 million. So we're immediately coming in with a $300 million flag, right? And that would take away from revenue that is expected in the state because we want that to go back out to individual households. And we've got lots of good reasons for it and excellent data to support why it's a good idea. But we're coming in for the 4th and in some cases 5th time to people saying, we have a big idea and we want you to implement a big idea. And the counterbalance to that is the floor falling out from under the state budget, thanks to what has happened in Washington, D.C. through H.R. 1. So immediately coming in, the governor really proposed a very, very conservative budget adjustment with very narrow changes. And his idea going into the budget or tax credit space was to give every taxpayer just a one-time tax refund of either $200 or $400, again, based on that $100,000 or $200,000 income, single or joint filer. And my initial reaction to that was that's a completely unsophisticated, not to be taken seriously idea, right? Although it did embody a concept of putting money back in people's pockets, right?
Sure, and he even began to call it an energy rebate at a certain point
It
in the
got rebranded in a
process.
couple of different ways.
And look, there's no doubt I've heard plenty in the course of the session, but also right now, those hot days that again, these same folks I was talking to were talking about running their air conditioner again and just being so paranoid during those 80, 90-degree days about what their utility bill is going to look like. So there's no doubt there's an understanding in the nomenclature of what's going on. But
That's
to your
right.
point, the $200 rebate is one time. It's a fraction of what somebody may have charged their utilities even just over those few hot days.
Right, right. And so that's the context that the Child Tax Credit Coalition was entering into, was the governor came up with something new and different. He didn't look at best practices. He didn't look at what other states are doing. He certainly didn't look to our playbook. He wanted to come up with something new that nobody had ever thought of since John Rowland. Okay. It wasn't a great idea when John Rowland proposed it. It wasn't a great idea by Governor Lamont either. But it did create a platform for a conversation about if we're going to use $500 million, what's the best way to use it? And in the shortest of short sessions, which are typically not ambitious anyway, in terms of policy, usually it's a trial balloon year, but not a successful year, particularly for big items like something like a child tax credit. The governor was not successful in his tax rebate proposal. The child tax credit was not successful in its tax rebate proposal. What and almost none, and there's been a fair amount of writing in the press about this, almost nothing went back to individual taxpayers as individuals. What did benefit this year were kind of the big picture advocacy. I don't want to call it special interest because it's very diffused, but education cost sharing got a significant increase one time, again, one time, and municipal aid got a big increase one time only. And it almost felt to me like a game of keep away, right?
Mm.
Like, okay, we got wolves at the door over here, we got wolves at the door over here, we got wolves at the door over there. We're just gonna give it to the kind of the big picture, and make the education wolf go away and make the municipal aid wolf go away. But what is going to happen, and what I really do hope comes out of today, is a renewed energy as we head into campaign season, right? There are some very unexpected things that have happened, particularly on the Democratic side, also on the Republican side. What was maybe a predictable set of campaigns and candidate issues has been a little bit knocked off balance since the conventions, right? Ned Lamont now has an opponent, Josh Elliott, who is a staunch supporter of the child tax credit. And I believe that the governor will have, what some people in the press have said, a long, hot summer, because the governor, as an incumbent, is going to have to be actively campaigning for the Democratic nomination. And that primary will be on August 11th. And no better listener than a candidate to be to be really very honest. And so this is an opportunity for us and for our allies and for the people, the real people who are outside of the advocacy circle, to be talking plainly about what is necessary in this time of significant inflationary pressure. And yes, these big institutions got some relief, and that will provide relief on the property tax end for a year, some temporary relief to those who own property, to those who own cars, but it's not going to provide relief to the people who aren't at that tier in our economy. And what we propose as a child tax credit is to recognize that a child is an economic driver in our state and that we need more of them. And the best thing that we can do for the families who have them is to recognize the economic contributions they're making. So there's really a strong opportunity, particularly through the summer, to work with candidates who are going door to door to make sure that they get the positive reinforcement on the proposal, because we are in a good space with it with relation to legislative advocacy and legislative co-sponsors. We're in a great space. We've got the majority of both the Democrat majorities who support this on the record. But this is really an opportunity to convert the governor and to get the governor in a space where he begins to use more of the rhetoric that maybe some of you have seen or heard related to utility bills this morning. I think his tone is changing. It feels like it's motivated very much by populist issues. And honestly, this is a populist policy proposal. So I don't know if I've covered what you wanted me to cover.
Totally. You've affirmed, Kate, why we appreciate you and are glad to have you on our team and in all of our campaigns. And as you said, all kind of on the same side of trying to make sure that these hardworking families get what they need out of the legislative sessions as we move forward. I'm going to pass the mic over because we're going to go through everything in our policy agenda now, but I should have said sooner, and it's my own mistake for not saying so, that if you have questions, the Q&A is open. And so if at any time you have one, just drop one in there. Don't feel like you need to be shy. And I will remind you again and again to do that. But all the gratitude to you, Kate, for that insightful download from the inner chambers of the state capitol. But we're going to go through
just before we move over. One quick question, Kate. You mentioned the potential for tax relief from local property and local auto taxes. But can you talk just for a minute about what has to happen for that relief to be real?
It is it's an overused metaphor on my part. It's a little bit like a Rubik's Cube. So the municipality has to recognize the additional state funding that's coming into it. And then each municipality has to decide affirmatively if they will apply the state funding, the additional state funding, to that way of collecting revenue. And they have to do it affirmatively. They can't just kind of make the math figure out. So that makes it a little bit more complicated. And I just want to add one footnote. I'm essentially an empty nester. My kids are 20 and 24 years old. So one is upstairs doing homework right now for a summer course. But I have to tell you, summer is not a relaxing time for working parents or for any parent. We know this, right? I know it personally. Schedules change, apple carts get way upset, but the price of gas in the summer is real because that means kids aren't getting on school buses. Parents have to drive them to camps. Parents have to pay for camp. And it is a stressful time. And really, if you or people who are experiencing that stress, this is exactly what we want the relief to be available for, is to just provide a little bit of breathing room for the families who are doing it all and aren't getting much support in the process.
Yes, totally right. And the gas hasn't even begun to go up the way I think it does tend to go up in the summer. It's a good question, Lisa. And so thank you, Kate. Passing you off to relax and enjoy the rest of our webinar, but we're going to go quickly through both items that were on our policy agenda, as well as some other items that we think are really important for folks to understand if you are an Alice family or you're working with Alice families, so you can convey what the wins are out of this legislative session for them. And so to get us started, hello, Tita, who is from United Way of Coastal and Western Connecticut. And I just wanted to check in with you about the 211, which did receive some increased investment this year. But why don't we start by just the very basics? And actually, as Kate was saying, right, families are going to be undergoing an incredible amount of different financial pressures this summer and going into the fall. So it might be helpful just to know what 211 is.
Sure. Yeah. So 211, for those of you who don't know about it, is a free and confidential way to get information about essential resources in your community. Anyone can access it over the phone or through the web, and they actually reach an actual person, which is what I love about it. You have a warm handoff to someone who is very knowledgeable, highly professional, and trained on getting you to the right resources in your community. And what's great about it too is if you call for something like food, but maybe you have a need for utility assistance or another area, they're able to be your navigator for those resources. So it's a fabulous resource for anyone who's in need of some assistance.
So keep that number handy.
211.
So cutting to the chase of it, I guess, was there a win? What was the win for 211 during this legislative session?
Yeah, so we had a big win during the special session, which Kate mentioned was back in November. 211 is an incredible resource, but it's also been flat funded for what is it, about 15 years now? As you know, the cost of everything is increased. So that really just means that that money doesn't go as far for the 211 line. And so we were able to work really closely with leadership in Hartford to secure $2.6 million to increase the staffing for the 211 information and resource line. So what that means is that short wait times will be shorter and people will be able to get help sooner. It's really exciting because I know there's a lot of nonprofits on this line, and our resources only go as far as people who are trying to reach them can know about them or access them. So it's a really important resource that makes everyone's work just go a little bit farther and be more efficient. So we're really excited about the money we were able to secure.
And actually, as Kate mentioned as well, that did come out of that federal emergency response fund that kind of helps to offset challenges. And we have encountered those challenges in more and more people needing help and asking for help. Like as one example, I know of during that SNAP freeze, the requests for food assistance went up 10 times just within that narrow window. And so I'm really excited about this as well. And, these folks are actually, they're all hired now. They're getting trained. They're going to start answering calls independently in a couple of months. So I hope it makes a big difference. Is there anything else you feel like Alice families and advocates should know about 211?
I mean, I think that it's going to become increasingly more and more important to have 211 there as an accessible, free, friendly resource as we head into the coming years, especially around what we've seen around SNAP, but also the changes coming down the pipeline for Medicaid, which we know impacts so many families and individuals across the state of Connecticut. So we're going to keep pushing for more support for 211 because we know it's a crucial resource in every community in Connecticut.
Love it. Thank you, Tita, for that to the point, right in an update on our 211 policy agenda item this year. Our next is not something that was explicitly on United Way's policy agenda this year, but we are huge supporters of providing children with food when they're at school. And so I just wanted to bring Amari on from End Hunger Connecticut. Hello, Amari.
Hi, Daniel, and thank you for that introduction. For all who don't know me, my name is Amari Brantley, and I serve as the policy coordinator. And in that role, I lead the School Meals for All Coalition for every child in the state of Connecticut. With the coalition, our mission is that fueling children for success is very important because no child should ever go hungry. And so this year, we are celebrating a very big victory as going into the next school year, we will be providing free breakfast for every child in the state of Connecticut, and free lunch for reduced price students that fall within that category, which many Alice families fall in. And our mission started last year when we fell short of achieving this victory, and we had to start flat with providing no meals for free for students, which first was introduced post the COVID era with ARPA funds. And we recognize the importance of that. And one key data point that we like to recognize that we are very proud of is that when breakfast was served for free to students in October of 2024 to October of 2025, 2.6 million less breakfast were served.
Mm,
So that's literally 2.6 million meals that weren't put on a plate, weren't offered to students. And just as a common sense thought, it's very hard to determine if those 2.6 million breakfasts were served at home because we understand what it's like for working parents, for all families across the state of Connecticut to have to struggle with that. And so this policy for the average family of four alleviates about $1,500 of extra cost in supporting children and fueling the future of the state of Connecticut. And we are very proud to have worked with advocates from all across the state of Connecticut. We are very proud that a majority of our bills and one of our bills received 102 co-sponsors, showing that our legislators believe in fueling the next generation of leaders in the state of Connecticut.
mm.
And we are
Thanks for
not
that,
done
Amari.
fighting yet, Daniel.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, but I really love, especially when we can talk about, the hard dollar amounts that families might be able to leverage, right? It's 1,500 more dollars basically in food that their children are going to be able to eat over the course of a year for that family of four. But, I also think it's helpful to lift up, there are families who qualify for free. And now that the law has changed this year, those families who qualify for reduced price lunch are also not going to pay for lunch. But Alice is a more expansive understanding of financial hardship, right? So, can you explain a little bit about how the school meals being universal really make sure that we're reaching families who are really maybe in that upper middle income bracket, but still struggling because their wages don't cover the cost of living in their area?
So universal school meals, which is our ultimate goal, but universal breakfast specifically allows every family and every child because children don't dictate the type of car, they don't dictate the zip code that their families live in, and they don't dictate the school district that they are able to attend. And so we believe offering a universal method to achieving school meals provides relief to families that may live in higher income neighborhoods or areas, but are still struggling to make ends meet. That video highlighted that 40% of Connecticut residents can't afford, and we recognize that Connecticut is unaffordable, but this policy allows their children to succeed in school and to receive a healthy, nourishing meal because no matter where you live at, that doesn't determine if you can afford $5 for a Lunchable, which we all know is a childhood snack. And I know growing up that I adored the graham crackers that were served a part of our school meals, but my family couldn't necessarily afford to send there. And I live in a middle income class in my city. And I just recognize that. And we recognize that a part of our campaign. And we fight for all students, no matter the revenue or the salary that your family makes or the town that you live in. And so we recognize that Universal captures everyone because we want to fight for an equitable Connecticut.
Mm. Well, thanks, Amari, for jumping on and giving us the download on the no-cost school meals effort. We're going to stay with children a little bit. You could look at that question, Amari, that just popped in the chat, maybe ping a quick answer. But I'm going to bring Vanessa on because no doubt if you have children right now, or you've seen the Alice survival budget, you know that childcare is a larger cost for most families with children than their mortgage or their rent. And so I'm really glad, Vanessa, you're here from the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance to give us sort of we hear a lot about this new early childhood education endowment in the news, in campaign materials, but if I had no idea what we were talking about, explain to me what this is.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. The Early Childhood Education Endowment was created in the 2025 legislative session. It's like a permanent savings account. It holds all the money that funds the Early Start CT program and all of its kind of related expenses. It's designed to receive large deposits from the state surplus each year. And the law that created the endowment also mandates that the Early Start program provides free childcare for families earning less than $100,000 per year. And families earning more than that will pay no more than 7% of their household income by July of 2027. Then in the future, the plan is to also expand the program to accept more children into the Early Start CT program and give a pay raise increase to educators who we all know are severely underpaid.
Definitely. Perfect. That's a great, simple explainer. But it doesn't start right now necessarily. Do you know when it sort of is going to end up rolling out?
That's right. So we were able to get $100,000 or
300.
$300,000. Sorry, my Siri thought I was
It's
talking to
okay.
her.
And
Sorry about that.
I'll make sure we get you mean $300 million.
Yeah, that was way off. So $300 million at least will be deposited into the endowment this year. And it could actually be more depending on how the books look when they close the budget in October. But that will, OEC is only allowed to spend 10% of that per year. So in order for us to get to free childcare or affordable childcare by July of 2027, those big $300 million deposits are going to have to keep happening. So it's definitely worth celebrating, but it's, the work's not over yet.
The work's not over yet. And even when we get there, just to really ground it, Vanessa, like what will be available to families in 2027, assuming the endowment becomes the size that we're all hoping it will? Like what program is going to be free?
Yeah. So the enrollment at any provider who is in the Early Start CT program. This is a little bit different than Care for Kids in that the program runs through the providers rather than the families applying for the subsidy. So if you attend an Early Start CT program as of July 1st, 2027, first, I believe, maybe it's the end of the month, not sure that. But as of July 2027, if you make less than $100,000 per year, you will receive free childcare through an Early Start CT program. If you make $100,001 per year, then you will pay no more than 7% of your household income. But again, that just depends on that can only happen if the money is there to pay for it.
That's right. And I will say, shout out to the Office of Early Childhood. There's the website they have put up has a lot of very clear explainers for folks. So it's very clear, are you in that kind of program? Are you not in that kind of program? It's not necessarily going to be available through every single child care provider right away. But thank you for clarifying that on sort of precisely where it starts. And more to come for sure on how we make sure that we keep this project going. And then last, as we already kind of started talking about, I'm very glad to welcome Janae from She Leads Justice, who will give us a little bit of an update as well on, we've already started talking about the child tax credit. But even before we jump into the weeds of the legislative session, Janae, I'm just curious, tax credits seem kind of a complicated thing. Why does this even matter if you're an Alice family, you work with Alice families, if we have a tax credit at all for families with children, or why should tax credits even be a calculation for these folks?
Thank you, Daniel. That is a great question. And first and foremost, these tax credits are important and necessary because, as we all know, raising children is expensive, and Connecticut is an expensive place to live. We have a wonderful state, but we do have an incredibly high cost of living. And we have learned that 40% of families in Connecticut are struggling to meet their basic needs week to week, month to month. They aren't making enough to cover their basic needs, let alone save. So a tax refund that is fully refundable and robust is critical for them to be able to catch up and get ahead.
Totally right. I hear it all the time. At that time of year, February, especially right in the beginning of the tax filing season, is when a lot of Alice families right away quickly file their taxes because that one payment makes a huge difference on catching up and getting ahead. So I know we've talked about this win a little bit, but I think we should keep talking about where we're at when it comes to establishing this in the state of Connecticut. What was our big win this year? And, how do we want to move forward from there?
Yeah, so we are grateful for the $250 expansion to the earned income tax credit. We know that our families really need and deserve that relief, but they also need and deserve the relief of a child tax credit. It's not an either or, it's a both and situation. And the Child Tax Credit Coalition, our advocacy started off really strong this legislative session. We were very pleased to see 4 different bills be introduced, and they had bipartisan support. And across these bills, we had 2 public hearings, hundreds of public testimony were submitted, and the verbal testimony was overwhelmingly in support of establishing a $600 per child, up to 3 children, permanent refundable child tax credit to help Connecticut families get ahead. Although those bills did not pass, it's still important advocacy, and we'll be back next year because what we have learned is that there's a growing understanding in the legislature around what we need to do to provide relief to our families and to fix our broken tax system. There's also an understanding that affordability needs to be at the forefront of conversations moving forward. And next year, as we move into looking at the state budget, the child tax credit conversation is an important one for helping people to understand that when we need to make financial choices about how we run our state, we shouldn't be balancing our budget on the backs of children and families that are already struggling to survive. So we are excited about the momentum that we have built. We will continue this advocacy because although the earned income tax credit expansion was deeply important, it doesn't reach enough families. A child tax credit, as we have advocated for, would reach 75% of Connecticut families. That's 550,000 children. There are families in every zip code that would benefit, and the return, dollar for dollar, on this investment is huge. This policy would cost about $315 million to the state, but the return on that is so high. Depending on the reports you look at, it could be $1.25 to $1.38 per dollar invested, all the way up to $5 per dollar invested. So this is a smart policy because we would not only be uplifting our families, we would also be making an investment in our local economies. So we will continue our advocacy throughout the summer and into the fall with an eye toward the legislative session that starts in January. And we invite everyone who's on the call with us today to join us in those efforts.
Well said, Janae. Well said. And we talked about this legislative session, kind of the money trickling down through your town and through your school district, whereas what we've been talking about in the child tax credit, it goes the other way. You bring that money into a family and into their household who has children, and then it ripples out into your communities, the small businesses, the babysitters, the summer camps, the grocery stores. So thanks for lifting that part up into it. I think that's important to kind of flip the narrative a little bit. And that's really us running through our whole policy agenda and more. 211, no-cost school meals, the early childhood education endowment, and of course, child tax credit. But we're kind of bookending our whole conversation today. We started a little bit by hearing a little bit from you, Representative Farrar, who is not driving, but is in a car, about when we started the year with the Alice launch event and hearing you in the video. But we just wanted to end this whole webinar by bringing you back to kind of what is our call to action as we get through this phase of the legislative session, the in-between session? How do we stay motivated and excited about this work. And no one better than you, who's one of those champions for all of these areas, than Representative Farrar.
Oh gosh, thank you, Daniel. I am grateful for this time reflecting with all of you. It really is important, and I would say for all of us, right, to take a breath and to reflect on such incredible hard work that everyone has been doing for months, for years. And I am very grateful for our partnership on all of these very critical issues for our state and for our families. And I just want to encourage everyone to take a breath, to take a note of reflection on some of these successes, some of these things we are still fighting for. Because I know for myself, what keeps me in it, what keeps me grounded is just coming back to my why. And I think after we all take a breath, after we reflect, it really has to come down to the why. Why are you fighting for so many of our families, our Alice families in the state? And I think for myself, that is so grounded in just these values, fairness, families, and justice for our families, and a true equity approach in our state where families can thrive. And I hope that everyone can feel at the end of the day that those values are still grounding them in the work ahead. And I hope at this moment in time, even though session is over, that as you continue to work with families who are coming through challenges, we know these families for important come January when we go back into session. But right now, because of so many struggles that folks are going through, we have an opportunity to keep making the case for many of these needs as it relates to the federal response fund that was mentioned earlier. And that is the federal response fund that the governor can allocate dollars from. And I think it's very critical that you see your engagement and your work around telling the stories of what families are going through as an ongoing role that you have to play, because we can continue to lift up those stories even though we're not in session. So you can share those with legislators, so you can ask candidates about them, those issues you care about, and that we can share those stories directly with the governor's office as it relates to the federal response fund. But I am encouraged just in being in partnership with all of you and knowing that so much of what we've continued to achieve has been because of our partnership and putting families at the center of it all.
That's a great point. I'm just going to lift up that sort of hit back one thing you said, Representative Farr, which is that we both have the federal response fund that could immediately be used, wherein something in that kind of domino effect that we talk about a lot with families, right? You get one unexpected medical bill, or you lose a shift for whatever reason, you don't get scheduled for as many shifts as you need. And we could have those conversations right now about utilizing the immense resource we have in that fund, and acknowledging that everyone in the General Assembly and the executive branch are up for re-election this year. And so they will be in conversations with people. They will be in conversations with you. They will seek your ideas and input. They're listening right now. This is a time for you all to be listening to what the needs of your constituents are. And you are all constituents of somebody in the House, somebody in the Senate, and the folks in the executive branch. And so it is okay to genuinely answer their questions on behalf of Alice families and all families, so that they really understand how challenging it is to keep the gas in the tank, keep the fridge full, keep the lights and the air conditioning on, and take care of your kids right now. Well, I hope that you get safely wherever
Thank
you're
you,
going.
Daniel. Yeah,
It's so
I
good to
appreciate
see
it.
you.
Thank you. I just really can't say enough about the work together. And as you said, we all have an opportunity right now, be it election season, and no matter what role you're in, keep sharing those stories, keep asking those questions, and
let's think thoughtfully also about how we can best keep up the advocacy around the use of the federal response fund together. So thank you so much.
Excellent points. Thank you. And thank you for everything this session. I will just wrap us up briefly with a couple of reminders. One is just a thank you all for coming and joining us or watching this if you're on the recording side of things. We are in a cadence now where every year there's going to be a new Alice report. And so we're going to put that out there together with you in the fall. So stay tuned for details about that. So we'll have an update of information about how challenging it is financially for families in Connecticut. And we'll also be updating our policy agenda at that time and making a statement about what solutions are right there in front of us that we want to advocate for with you so that it's easier for these families to get by in our state. We do also have another webinar coming up next week. I just want to plug it. You could find it on our website and on our social media. It's about asset building with baby bonds and 530A accounts in Connecticut. It's on Thursday, May 28th from 11 to 12, again on Zoom. And so this is just, again, when we talk about ALICE, the AL stands for Asset Limited. So these are two types of programs that we're going to talk about to help families build those assets over time, particularly for their children. And of course, this recording is posted and it is available to share. So please don't hesitate to pass this along to folks who you think could be interested and be involved in this advocacy work. We don't do this alone at all, as you saw in this amazing lineup of speakers who I'm so grateful for joining us. So the more the merrier, and we'd be grateful for continued support and participation. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to all of our panelists and guests. And we will definitely see you all soon. Bye-bye for now.